The following is a presentation of TFNN. Mindful Living with Allie Ford and Tom O'Brien.
Sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah.
Call now, toll free at 1-877-927-6648. Internationally at 727-445-1044. Now, Allie Ford and Tom O'Brien.
Welcome to Mindful Living, everybody. It's Allie Ford and Tom O'Brien, and we want to help you get healthy, feel good, and live life to the extreme fullest every single day. Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm awesome. Did you have a good Memorial Day weekend?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah?
That third day off is always great.
A big blessing. I know.
And the weather was great.
It was gorgeous.
The water was great.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean.
Did you go out on the water? Were you on a boat?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
It was fun.
Nice.
It was fun.
Yeah, you know, we had a great weekend. It was all about friends and family for us this weekend.
Right, yeah.
Friday night we had a wedding to go to, which was
Okay.
absolutely spectacular on St. Pete Beach. It was colorful
nice.
and beautiful right
Yeah.
at sunset. It started at 7 p.m.
Okay.
The weather could not have been more gorgeous. The colors were bright. And
Yeah,
just,
because you don't want it too hot.
oh,
right?
no, it was
right.
nice and perfect timing. And then Saturday we got up and headed over to Orlando,
Okay.
where, get this, I saw a friend of mine I've not seen for at least 5 years.
Yes.
She was a friend with whom I started teaching and practicing yoga back in San Francisco.
Okay.
And so our lives, while she now lives in London since we, moved to different cities,
Yes.
are very parallel. She has 2 children, as do I, around the same ages. She's teaching yoga in London. I'm teaching here in Tampa Bay, and we hadn't seen each other for 5 years. So you know how that goes when
Yeah.
you get back together
Right.
after all those years, and it's like you
That'd be really fun.
You hadn't missed a day. Oh yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it
And
was-
that's always cool. Not missing a day and just, 3 minutes into it, or at least an hour into it, you feel like you've been with her forever,
Totally.
which is dynamite. That's, that's a real friend, which is nice. Yeah.
It is a shot of medicine for the soul.
Yeah, it is.
And a really good reminder of how important friends are. You know?
Oh, big time.
Because there's just something about those
we were made
relationships.
to work.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no way. Right. We were made to basically have friends and families and have fun. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I've gone through that in my head so many times.
Oh.
Okay. It would make sense. Think about it years ago, right? We'd be running around, somewhere, right, in the middle of nature, just getting food.
Yeah. We're definitely pack
having
animals.
a good time. No, right? No, I mean, that's real.
It's true. It's honest, yeah.
And then we're laying around having a good time.
Of course.
Right?
Well, I'll tell you, as I say, it was like a day hadn't passed, and so the husbands were so sweet. After dinner, a fun family-filled day and dinner, they took the children and put them to bed so that we could have some girlfriend time, and that's when it got...
That's when it got really fun.
That's when it got old school.
Yeah,
as though we were still the same age when we met, like single, tearing in San Francisco up across the town, and we definitely had some crazy fun.
I think I saw those wanted pictures in Orlando on the Senator last Sunday. That was probably you and your girlfriend, right?
What? I don't have a clue what you're talking about. Yeah, well, we did go out for a late night together, and we did a little karaoke. I'm sorry. What? What did I say?
That's fun. Karaoke. I love it.
I got talked into it.
That's good. Was it fun?
Yeah, it was hilarious.
I bet.
Hilarious. I don't do that often, but
that's good.
Yeah, after
that's good for your soul too.
Oh, so good. It reminded me of just how healing music is, and
yeah, big time.
Oh, we talked so much about that.
There's no doubt about that.
How. Yeah, everybody can relate to how good it feels to get up and sing your favorite song, belt it out in the car, in the shower, especially when you feel like nobody's looking or nobody can hear you.
That's that sign, right? Sing like no one's listening.
Dance like nobody's watching. Yeah. Sing like nobody's listening.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it was. So that's exactly how I approached it, as though nobody was listening and nobody was watching.
That's perfect. Man. That's good.
Oh,
I like
it was great.
Every day, right now. I know you've been your schedule's really full.
It's really full.
You're big time.
It's awesome. June's about to get very crazy. I have a 200-hour teacher training program starting that's basically sold out here in Clearwater.
Oh, good. Oh, perfect.
It's awesome. And we have an ongoing event that meets on the weekends. It started back in March. I've got, several weekends of that left, 4 or 5 weekends left in that one. And then in July, I'm starting one in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Right.
A weekend event that is quickly selling out.
Nice.
So there's just a handful of spots left there. And one in Panama City, Florida, beginning in September that is completely sold out.
That's amazing.
So
that's so cool. Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a sign of the times, man. I mean, just like we talk about on the show, people want to take their health back into their own hands.
Right.
And yoga and meditation are a lovely way to do that. And, whether people want to teach or not, the program's called a teacher training because it is accredited. And a lot of people also at this, time of our market and our sort of state of the world, people are redefining their careers. But whether or not that's your goal, I mean, it's an awesome way to dive in and learn more about yoga and just understand who you are and what makes you healthy. And you meet some fabulous people, make some really cool connections.
No doubt. During the break, I'll put Bloomberg back up because I want to show you this article. I think I sent, no, I didn't send it to you yet because I had to send it to myself first. So, the meditation deal, right? The meditation deal, folks, inside Wall Street, is going over the top. Another guy out to, and what it is, it's like anything else. Well, it's guess what? You meditate to make more money. So it's real simple. I'm not kidding.
No, I know.
This article out here today. So Bloomberg has a magazine that goes to describe as, but they're good writers. It's a 15-page article today. And what it's about is, you have Bill Gross, who's the biggest bond guy is. He's been into it forever. You have the Third Point guy. That's the
we've talked about on the show.
Dan Loeb.
Yes.
His wife was she's into yoga teacher. The whole ball. Right?
Yeah.
And then you have Ray Dalio.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they go through those lists, folks. Well, there's another guy. What ended up happening is that they're correlating this every quarter. The funds have to come out and say, okay, they either made money or lost money. And what they were doing, they're correlating it like, oh my God, so this guy that is really making money hand over fist, they call him and say, what is he? He said, well, 2 years ago I started meditating.
Wow.
And he says, and that's it.
Then that's it.
No, it was a great quote.
It really is.
It was a great quote. He says 20 minutes a day, and the way he put it, listen how he put it. This was pretty good. This was really good, actually. I thought it was great. Because it wasn't, he was making a big thing out of it, but when the reporter came back to him again, like, well, really? He says, yeah. He says, he says he's doing the TM. He says, yeah. He says, I went in this class. They gave me this word, and that's it. I started printing money.
Wow.
And it's a good article though.
Yeah.
But we know it's real.
We know it's real. I have to say, today's a new moon, and it's a beautiful day to meditate. Anybody looking to start a meditation practice or who has an existing practice, today is a great day to do it. Even if you haven't done it yet today, find 20 minutes if you have it. Anything's better than nothing. And you'll find that on the energy today, it's much more calming. You feel very relaxed.
Yeah,
they say that as the moon wanes, that our energy and our thoughts go as well. So you're able to focus much more easily, more readily.
I've seen that. I started yesterday. Yesterday I could really start focusing.
Yeah.
And so the new moon is when you start in your journal, if you say what you want to get done, and then
that's right. It's a beautiful day to write down your dreams, your goals, and you'll find that it brings some clarity to your thoughts and your focus in your life. Which, I mean, let's face it, there are many benefits of meditation. But that's what this guy's talking about. One of the biggest benefits is that it helps you focus and make clear decisions.
Well, what this guy did, that's what the article's about. What this guy did, see, the markets overseas got destroyed. Our market's still at highs. The market overseas got destroyed. This guy was in the market overseas. He waited. Guess what? He bought very close to the bottom, and now they've been coming back. And that's what the article's about.
Wow.
Like, how did you step in and buy when all these other pros would not step in and buy? And he just, he says the calmness, so I'm sure he was just focused on fundamentals, but he was calmer instead of that, like, oh no, what has just happened?
A knee-jerk reaction, right. Yeah, so he made a really good decision, and it's awesome to hear that he's attributing that to his meditation practice.
No, it is. It absolutely is. So you better start doing it now, folks, because what ends up happening, if you're going to trade doing it, what ends up happening after a certain amount, will probably take 2 or 3 or 4 years, then you're going to be competing against everyone else that's doing it, and then the edge goes down. It really does.
Yeah, it's true.
If I found out anything in the marketplace, the first couple years of something happening, the edge is better. you know. And then, unfortunately, but that's good. That's good for everyone else. That's good.
That's right.
It's good for society.
Well, I do have a free meditation on my website, allieford.com. So for people who are interested in just having a quick tool that you don't have to subscribe to anything, you don't have to download anything. It's just under the teacher training resources on my website. It's a 10-minute meditation. It's a lovely way to get started.
Huge.
Yeah, totally. So. Well, talking about, having being ahead of the curve, tonight we've got a specialist on with us who's going to help us get ahead of some of the issues that teenagers are facing today. And what I love about this conversation, it's a really important continuation of the conversation we had last week with Dr. Michael Smith, who is a child psychologist and helped us kind of understand the state of the world today that teenagers are trying to navigate. He talked about some of their strengths as well as some of their risks. So our specialist tonight is going to be helping us understand how to better now communicate about all of these issues with our teenagers and our children in general. So I'd like to introduce our guest this evening. He's Dr. Ben Snyder with Family Psychology Associates, who provides comprehensive mental health services to children, adolescents, emerging adults, and families. Specifically, Dr. Snyder specializes in the treatment of depression, anxiety, social skills, and problematic behaviors such as defiance and impulsivity. He's a family-focused clinician who promotes improved parent-child communication and conflict resolution. Dr. Snyder, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you very much.
Welcome, Doctor.
Thanks for joining us tonight. So as I said in last week's show, we had the privilege of speaking with your colleague, Dr. Smith, who talked about the strengths and the risks for teenagers today. So the question for you now is, how do we foster open communication with our teenagers about these issues?
Well, I think it really is all about the relationships you can develop with the children and teenagers. I think a lot of parents vacillate between this sort of role dynamic of being either, am I being too friendly with my child, or am I being too much of a disciplinarian? And so a lot of people sort of fall on one side or the other. They feel like that they need to be, the boss the entire time, or they feel like, I don't want to hurt my child's feelings, so I want to be more friendly with them. And I think what really needs to happen is kind of a combination of two. Children and teenagers need to know who runs the home. They need to know what the rules of the house are, what happens if they follow the rules, what happens if they break the rules. So they need to have very firm boundaries, but at the same time, they need to feel supported by their parents. They need to know that their parents are interested in the things that interest them. They need to know that their parents are interested in their hobbies and want to partake in some of those hobbies with the children. Parents need to know who the children's friends are and what kind of activities the friends are getting into. So really, it's sort of that dual relationship where you have to be the authoritarian, but also you need to be someone who's active and interested in the lives of the children.
This is a really important or interesting topic for me because you definitely hear both sides of the coin. Some parents say, I'm the boss and what I say goes. And, on the flip side of the coin, you have the parents who say, we have to be completely honest with our teenagers. We want to be their best friends and we want to tell them everything we've ever done. So you're saying you need to have a combination of the two. But what is your opinion of just complete honesty with teenagers? Do we really tell them everything we've done?
I think that's sort of it's a dangerous task to start. Basically what I tell parents is that we don't want to tell our children anything that we're not planning to have it thrown back in our face. Kids, they are, even starting at a young age, 2, 3 years old, they are masters at manipulating their parents. They're trying to figure out a system. They're trying to push boundaries. They're trying to see what they can get away with. And it's totally natural. It's something that is part of the developmental process. To be successful in life, you have to be able to push boundaries. Sometimes you have to be able to feel out systems, feel what you can get away with in certain areas, and understand people. And so it's part of the natural process.
Sure.
So the more information we give about ourselves to the children, things like, what I deal with a lot are parents talking about, should I let kids know, if I drank or if I used any sort of illegal drugs when I was a kid. Those kinds of things. What I always tell the parents is that, it's a value judgment on your own part. But if you're trying to tell your children you never want them to drink until they're 21, but you told them as a teenager you used to drink as well, be prepared to have that thrown in your face, have questions asked of you, and to have to defend yourself there. So for the most part, I do feel like that some disclosure is okay, some open discussion is okay, but we need to be a little bit thoughtful about what we tell our kids.
Such good information. I'm looking forward to getting more into this conversation with you, Dr. Snyder. So stay right there. We're coming up on a break, and we'll be back with more Mindful Living in just a minute.
In quiet markets, investors search for new trading opportunities. We'd like to introduce you to a new product that provides opportunities even in flat markets. Nadex, the North American Derivatives Exchange, is a new and innovative Chicago-based exchange registered with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and unlike most other exchanges, Nadex allows you to trade directly through them with direct market access when using their trading platform. Nadex never charges a fee to use their platform, which even includes real-time charts and full customization capability. Nadex's unique short-term binary options allow traders and investors to capitalize on strategies even when the underlying markets are quiet. Nadex's innovation has allowed them to come up with a line of unique trading products that are unavailable anywhere else. See how it works at nadex.com. That's NADEX.com, or click on the Nadex banner on the front page of TFNN.com. Futures and options trading involves risk and may not be appropriate for all investors.
We're told to follow our passion and everything else will fall into place. I hope that's what each of you are doing each and every day. Hi, I'm Steve Rhodes, host of the Money Master Show at TFNN.com, and my passion for technical analysis is what led me to the most fundamental discovery in pattern recognition, the Rhodes Momentum Indicator, market scanner, and trading strategy. A set of tools that identify the momentum and power of the trend, the likes of which have never been seen before, for every market and every time frame. Yes, folks, the trend is your friend, unless you're on the other side. New to technical analysis? This is the place to start. And experienced traders take advantage of the trend like never before. Experience the power of the Rhodes Momentum Indicator each day, available to subscribers of my newsletter service, Mastering Probability. I guarantee your satisfaction for the next 30 days unconditionally, so there's no risk to you other than being on the wrong side of the trend. Mastering Probability, available on the homepage of TFNN.com. And folks, live with passion.
No matter where you listen to TFNN programming, we want you to know you can always access your favorite shows on demand through TFNN.com. TFNN airs live programming every market day from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. Eastern, and you can view each program by accessing Tiger TV through our homepage. We even have an easy link for all mobile devices, including iPhones and iPads, located at the top right-hand corner of the TFNN homepage. You can use your smartphone to view Tiger TV, but if you don't have a mobile connection that can keep up with streaming live video, then you can simply visit TFNN.mobi in the browser of your smartphone for live streaming audio of all of our programs. The mission of TFNN is to educate our audience directly and interactively through our interactive website and radio call and talk shows. TFNN is able to teach all levels of investors the technical skills needed to trade in today's marketplace. In order to get the best information possible, TFNN has assembled the most respected financial minds in the country to provide the most current news and comprehensive advice available. TFNN.com. Educating investors. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not here. What are you doing right now? Mindful Living with Allie Ford and Tom O'Brien.
Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah.
Back to Mindful Living, everybody. We're here with Dr. Ben Snyder, who's helping us understand how to communicate clearly with our teenagers. Just before the break, we were talking about a pretty sensitive subject, and that is how honest should we be about some of the choices we ourselves as parents have made with our teenagers.
You know, Doctor, when you talk about I'd like to set up a scenario here, because the aspect of, let's say all the schools, schools in general, they always have, all these drug counseling deals, right? So you have two teenagers, right? 14, 15 years old. You go up to the school. They give you the whole, drug counseling deal. You're driving back home. Your kids are in the back seat. They ask the parents, "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, have you smoked any pot? Have you done this? Have you done that?" And if the parent did, so the situation there is that if they say no, and they start talking to them, you have a situation that, okay, now they're not telling the truth. If they say yes, then they walk them through it. In that type of scenario, is there a yes or a no? Is there a wrong or right?
Well, I mean, I think what's absolutely okay to do for parents is to give the children a non-answer. Children might not, depending on their age, they might not need to know those kinds of answers. If the children are,
what they're asking, I'm specific.
Obviously, if they're older,
I'm specific.
Maybe you can have a more honest conversation with them. But if middle school or even high school age children, and they ask you, have you ever smoked marijuana before, or have you ever done any illicit drugs, or have you gotten drunk to the point, or have you drank to the point of intoxication? There are ways around that without actually answering the question. If you're not comfortable answering that question, you can say things like, "Well, why do you ask that? What are you thinking about? What kind of questions do you have about that?" And even just redirecting them, "Well, I'm not really comfortable talking about that," or that's not really the point of this. That you obviously have some sort of question that you want to ask about this. So what is it that you want to ask?
Well,
so there are ways of answering that question and responding to it in a way that allows the child to ask questions and facilitate a conversation, but it doesn't necessarily open you up. So you don't have to worry about lying to the child, but you also don't have to worry about oversharing.
Well, what I don't understand is that why is it such a big deal? I mean, it's your child. You should be able to tell them the truth. What you're suggesting, you're saying that you're getting around it, but not saying something is not the truth also. So I don't understand, a child that's 14, 15, 16 years old, that's a young adult.
I think that's a good point, though, is a good, I think, continuation question is, at what age is it appropriate to start having these conversations?
And I think that's really up to sort of the family value. So I think what we're touching on here is every family deals with things a little bit differently. Every family has different ways that they want to raise their children, and there really isn't so much of a right or a wrong way of doing things. But it's not as simple as a black and white. You either have to lie or you have to tell the truth. Just skirting around the question and not necessarily answering. It's not lying to the children. It's really getting at the questions that they're hoping to have answered. There's a reason why they're asking you if you've ever smoked. There's a reason why they're asking you if you've ever drank. And it's because they have questions. They want to know what's going on. They want to know why these things are so taboo. And so you can facilitate that conversation without giving them too much information. If it is something that you want to let the children know about, if you want to say, well, when I was in high school, I did experiment a little bit with some drugs. I found that this is the way that it made me feel. This is what it did for, my academic and my social life and things like that. If you want to have that conversation with the children, that's fine. You can, but you do have to be prepared for later on when you find out that your child, if you find out that your child has smoked marijuana, for example, they're going to come right back to you and say, well, you did it when you were a kid, so why can't I do it right now? So that's what you kind of have to be prepared for when you be completely truthful and open with the children. Once they turn, into later on in high school, into college, especially when they become adults, and their personalities and their behaviors and their styles are already very well established. At that point, I think it's okay that you can be a little bit more open and honest about your own experiences. But a young adolescent child, yes, they are turning into a young man or a young woman, but at the same time, they are still
very impressionable.
Very impressionable and very malleable to their surroundings. So if the idea is there in their head, they are going to try to push boundaries.
Yeah,
so,
no, I'm having a hard time with what you're saying, specifically because when it's laid out like that, the aspect of what they're being taught by someone else, and I'm specifically talking to drugs, okay, or alcohol, it doesn't matter, that if you don't explain to them what is going on, well, someone else is doing the education. And the concept, I guess, that I have had deal thinking that you have to be an adult at 17 or 18 or 20 years old to have a conversation like that. It just seems to me that it's kids at 17 years old, they've already left their house.
But I think you could, I think you definitely need to have, and I want to ask you this, Dr. Snyder, you definitely need to have conversations about drugs and about sex at an early age. And I think that can be from an educational nature. But it's important, this is interesting because my children had a Say No to Drugs Day at school this year, and my daughter's in kindergarten, and my son was, I think, just turned 7. So we were driving home from school, and my son said to me, "Mommy, you drink drugs?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?"
Yeah.
You know, and he said, "Well, you drink coffee every morning that has caffeine, and that's drugs." So I think it's a really important, thing to understand when it's appropriate to introduce these concepts to children and how. So you're saying at maybe middle school, definitely by middle school, because we see children having sex in middle school or having sexual conduct in middle school and experimenting with drugs that early. So this is the time probably to start educating, yes?
Well, I don't think that there is a necessarily an exact right time. I do. What I think is the most important thing is that you present yourself in a way that is receptive to the children coming to you and talking with you. You don't want to come across as intimidating or punitive or disciplinary. You want them to know that they can come to you and ask questions, and you're not going to get upset. It's going to be a safe environment to ask questions. They need to feel comfortable with that. Whatever you decide to talk to them about, that's up to you. But you do need to be aware that everything that you tell them is going to have consequences. I never tell parents really to lie to children. I do tell them that there are some times that there are child-friendly versions of the truth. But the kids don't need to know the whole truth. But if you do want to give it to them, that's fine. But you are going to be possibly dealing with some feedback from that. You have to be willing to understand that and willing to take that on later on if it does come your way.
Sure. I can see that also.
I think that, specifically when you look at family differences, I've worked with some families that are very, sex, for example, is an issue it's awkward to discuss with the family. It's something that, some families are very open about and talk openly about. And then there are some families that are very comfortable with the school giving all of the information about sex and parents taking a hands-off approach to it. Is one way better than the other? Not necessarily. It's just it's a family values thing.
I know I want to be the parent to tell my children about it. Oh my gosh. But I definitely understand that, at a certain age, there is a point where children may not be able to be objective about what you're telling them, so it needs to be more informational. And I think that's what you're saying, and then
allowing the children to know that it's safe and it's comfortable to talk to you about things. They can talk to you about sensitive things. They can talk to you about questions that they may be afraid to ask you. Drugs and sex and alcohol, those are questions that teenagers especially are very uncomfortable talking to their parents about. And oftentimes parents are uncomfortable talking to the kids about. So as long as you can do it in a supportive way rather than a punitive way, really there's not a one way is always better than the other way kind of thing. It always depends on the parent, depends on the child. It also depends on the environment that the child is in, the neighborhood that they're growing up in, the high school or the middle school that they attend. There are lots and lots of factors out there, so it's hard for me to make a blanket statement of this is the best way to do things or this is the best way of doing things. It really is an individualized sort of situation.
Well, you mentioned, creating a situation in your family where they feel like they can come to you and talk to you. So, what are some of your tips there? You said get involved in their activities. How else can you foster that relationship with your children?
Getting involved in the activities is one thing. Understanding where your children are coming from, so trying to be as empathetic as possible. What's going on? Find out what's going on with them at school. Talk to them about what's going on with their friends. Talk to them about what's going on in their lives and at school. Also, I think what a lot of parents end up doing is we end up getting caught up in sort of a discipline-only routine where the children come home from school and we interact politely for a while, but the only real interaction people have is when the kids are doing something wrong. When they're playing politely or when they're playing nicely or quietly, parents take that as time to do their own thing, relax, watch TV, read a book, do what they need to do. And my suggestion is always sort of take that time also to interact with the children. If the child, a lot of parents don't like doing these kinds of things, but if the child is into video games, for example, go and sit down, ask them about the game, see if you can play with the child. If the child is into sports, go outside, shoot the basketball, throw the football, throw the softball around. Do whatever you can. Get involved with the child's activities, and those kinds of things will help foster that kind of relationship where it becomes less punitive. You're still there in a punitive aspect and disciplinary aspect.
Dr. Snyder, I'm going to ask you to pause there as we take a break, and we'll be right back.
And the more you're involved in those kinds of
You take a hands-on approach to managing your investment strategy. You're always looking for the next trading opportunity to magnify your perspective. Direction Shares connects sophisticated traders with a powerful array of ETFs from a wide range of asset classes. The markets may go up and down, and you want tools for both sides of the trade. Discover how we can help at DirectionShares.com today. An investor should consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the Direction Shares carefully before investing. The prospectus and summary prospectus contain this and other information about Direction Shares. To obtain a prospectus or summary prospectus, please contact Direction Shares at 800-851-0511. The prospectus or summary prospectus should be read carefully before investing. An investment in the funds is subject to risk, including the possible loss of principal. The funds are designed to be utilized only by sophisticated investors such as traders and active investors employing dynamic strategies. Investors in the fund should understand the consequences of seeking daily investment results, understand the risk of shorting, and intend to actively monitor and manage their investments. Distributor, Foreside Fund Services, LLC.
Who says you can't take it with you? TFNN says you can. With your mobile device and TFNN's live radio streams, TFNN has put it all in the palm of your hands. No special apps to download. No subscription fees for live radio or Tiger TV streams. We say you can.
Now let's go over to the dollar, because the dollar is going to be the generator. It is the generator of basically higher dollar, lower market. And what the dollar has done, and this whole uptrend, folks, has just gone sideways. The way it works, folks, is this.
We say you can. The Tiger Financial News Network. Smart investors and professional traders know you can. TFNN.com. Educating investors. Life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. Mindful Living with Allie Ford and Tom O'Brien.
Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah.
Welcome back to Mindful Living. We're talking about communicating with our teenagers today, and Dr. Ben Snyder of Family Psychology Associates was just helping us understand or give us ideas on how to get involved with our teens and ensure that we've got open lines of communication. I do like the point that you made that oftentimes we are the disciplinarians, and as parents, we need to get involved with our children when they are having fun, when they're living life to the fullest,
Totally.
and enjoying their moments, so we get to know them as people and what it is that they like to do. You know,
And you're not always saying, do this, do that, having a good time.
Oh yeah, and I think that that can foster that. Just the wall goes up when you're either constantly telling a child what they should do or shouldn't do, as opposed to making it sort of helping them feel empowered to make the right choices. I wanted to ask you, too, one thing we like to do at our house, Dr. Snyder, is try to have dinner together as much as possible. And I wanted to ask if how you address this issue of getting involved with your children for busy families today, because let's face it, families are busy and getting busier, and oftentimes parents are really not involved in their children's lives at all. How do you address that with parents?
No, it's a very common thing, especially parents that have multiple children that are involved in lots of activities. You have one parent that's running one child to soccer practice while the other one is running the other child to dance practice, and then when they come home, they still have homework to do and eat dinner, and then it's bath time and bedtime. So where do we find time for each other?
Yeah.
And really, it's working with the parents and sort of developing a budget on their time. To figure out when we can have those times together. And even the smallest times can really be effective, even if it is just, a quick dinner, rather than everybody standing around the kitchen, shoveling food in their mouths. See if we can all sit down at the table, even if it's only for 15 minutes. And when we're doing this, we have tablets off. We have phones off. This is interacting time. The morning before school, everyone sits down for breakfast together. I know this can be a hectic time. Let's see if we can work something like that out in the car.
Yeah.
On the way to the different activities.
Yeah, one of the
Talk
things
with each other. Turn down the radio, turn off the phones, and talk with each other.
Yeah.
Facilitate the communication. And so we have to take advantage with busy schedules, busy families. We have to take advantage of the small times that we have together. And then also I also encourage families to do big stuff every now and again. Always try to make some sort of family activity throughout the week. Schedule an evening to go out to dinner if you have the resources for that, or to cook a dinner at the house that is a nice sit-down meal. Take vacations together, go camping together, do things that are just family-focused, and again, that involve interaction and activity, not sitting around on cell phones or on tablets or on video games or watching the television.
Yeah, that is so hard to see. It pains me when I go to a restaurant and I see a family or even friends or couples sitting together and they're not even looking at each other. They're just looking at their phones. It's painful to me.
Right.
I mean, I wanted to say, shut that thing off.
Cell phones and tablets now, it seems more nowadays, are used as behavioral control devices. A child starts acting up at dinner at a restaurant, and the parents hand that child, their phone.
Yeah.
And so the kid sits there and plays a video game. So what kind of skills are we teaching that child?
Right. Yeah.
Essentially what we're teaching them is if we throw a fit, then we get to do something that entertains us. You're not teaching that child how to sit at a restaurant and behave in public. So it's challenging.
It definitely is. It definitely opens my eyes, just with my own young children, as to when we're allowing them to play those devices. And as you say, is it a reward at a time when they probably, may not need a reward? You also mentioned when we're talking about the busyness of families, and I think a lot of times it's us as parents. I know I can speak for myself. I sign my kids up for things because I want them to have a full life, and I want them to have all these amazing experiences. And I do see families running crazy where a parent or the other is pretty much like a taxi service. Do you ever have, I'm curious, in your practice, do you ever have a child say to you, I'm overbooked, my parents have me doing too many things?
Yes. And sometimes they don't say those things with words. Sometimes you'll see that with behaviors. The older kids, they are the ones that are in high school. They're a little bit more verbal. They can tell their parents, I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I've got too much stuff going on right now. There's too much on my plate. The younger ones are a little bit more behavioral. You'll see them acting out at bedtime. You'll see them starting to act out in school, act out right before they have to go to certain activities. So they always communicate that to you. So I think it is a fine balance, and it's important to get your children involved in things, whether they're teenagers or younger children. It helps breed confidence. It helps breed assertiveness skills. It helps team building. All of these aspects that are going to help them be successful throughout their lives. All of these activities, whether they're sports or clubs or school-based activities, competitive things, but all of this really is helpful for the children. But if you overwhelm them, it can be detrimental as well. But the children usually let you know when you can tell when they're not enjoying life anymore.
Yeah, Doctor, is there a predominant problem, or is it spread, across different problems as children or families come to you?
Like the main problem.
It's.
And problem is probably the wrong word. Just what their concerns are, when they come to you. Is it anxiety? Is it social pressures? Is it, is it things that have been happening forever in, society in general? Or has it changed?
I see a pretty broad spectrum of issues walking through the doors that come to see me. But I will notice patterns. Toward the beginning of the school year,
yes,
I noticed a lot more anxiety.
Okay.
Specifically performance-based anxiety, worried about tests or school. And then, toward maybe the middle of the year, the middle of the school year, the academic year,
yes.
I receive a lot of referrals for social skills issues. Kids who have a hard time interacting with others, reading other people's emotions. They're not making friends very easily.
Right.
But that's when I also see a lot of kids coming in for more executive functioning kind of issues, difficulty with paying attention to things, planning, organizing, those kinds of issues. And then later on in the year, I see a lot of kids that are coming in, for some depressive issues and some more mood-based kind of issues. So really, I get a good spectrum of kids that come in throughout the year, but I am noticing as the academic year goes for the children that I see.
Yeah, you can put that right on a chart. So it's social pressure issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Social. There's tomes of research that demonstrate that essentially the largest component, especially on the adolescent behavior, the largest predictor of behavior is peer group association. That has such a heavy influence on how the children interact and their behaviors in the school, in the home, and on the community. And so when they have difficulty relating to their peers, or if they fall into a group of peers that maybe, is not, they're not focused on success.
Yeah, they're trouble, right?
It can really drive down behavior.
No, I can see that. It's interesting because I've said to many folks, my children are older, but I've seen plenty of people do a great job, and I tell people you got to get lucky too. I've seen some of my friends who do a great job, and all of a sudden, oh man, they just didn't, and it's, you get in the wrong crowd, all of a sudden something happens, and it's like, oh man, here we go, and which you can come out of, there's no doubt about that, but that plays into it,
Totally. I just sat next to a woman on an airplane coming back from teaching a yoga retreat, and she was in tears. She had a teenager who, she said she and her husband didn't really drink. They'd have wine with dinner, and never done drugs, and they were church-going folks, and you never know what the other family dynamics were. But she was shocked that her child was addicted to prescription drugs. She's chalked it up to the wrong crowd. So, how do you communicate with children about that? Because again, man, I know that telling a child you don't want to say you cannot hang out with this person. So how do you talk about that with your child or your teenager especially?
It's a difficult thing for anyone out there listening, or for any of the parents that I see with younger children. I let them know that it really does start early on. Talking to the children about what your expectations are, what kind of people you would like them to associate with, what kind of behaviors you expect from them. Children thrive in environments where there are very high expectations, but also very high levels of support. So we expect you to adhere to a certain level of behavior. We expect you to receive a certain level of grades. But if you fall, we're going to be here to catch you and pick you back up. And so children can feel that it does help them out a lot. So instilling those values, your own family values and your own family expectations for behaviors and performance early on really, really helps. Sometimes there's not a whole lot you can do when the kids get into high school or middle school. It's almost like a very slow process. You don't notice it at first, and then all of a sudden you realize, my gosh, I don't know any of my children's friends, and I don't know what they're doing on the weekends, and he comes home smelling like smoke on Saturday nights, and he comes home an hour after a curfew. So it's a scary thing. Most times, if we're already right into that situation, going at a head-on approach with the children is pretty ineffective. By saying you cannot hang out with this person because they're a bad influence, they're this, they're that, it's always going to end up starting an argument. And most times the children, their brains shut off. They're not listening to you anymore. They're not hearing what you're saying. None of the points that you're making are valid to them. This is when you're going to be hearing things like, Mom, Dad, you all just don't understand. You all are too old. Kids are different nowadays. Everyone in school acts like this. It's not just my friends. You guys are so judgmental. You don't know these people. They're all good people. You'll hear all of these things over and over again. So, what I try to tell parents is to do a more roundabout approach. Think about, who the crowd is that you would like your son to be hanging out with or your daughter to be hanging out with. What kind of activities are those children doing? And try to get your child into those kind of activities. So getting them involved in the sports, getting them involved in the clubs, getting them involved in youth groups or churches or whatever it is wherever it is you would like to see your child, try to get them involved in those kinds of things early on, because those are very big protective factors. Mm-hmm. When we're looking at risk for delinquency, we think in terms of protective factors and risk factors, and we you basically want to make a list. And If there are more protective factors and risk factors out there, chances are your child is going to end up being okay. The protective factors are going to be things, extracurricular activities, and involved parents. So being involved in the schools, knowing all of your children's friends, knowing your children's friends' parents. All of those activities are all of those kind of factors are really going to be very protective. And if you have more of those than you do the risk factors, which are going to be downtime for the children, unstructured time, being involved in a neighborhood or in a school where there's high drug or alcohol activity, those kinds of things are they're pretty big risks. But if we can outweigh those with all of these protective influences, most times the children will come out of it okay.
It's good advice, definitely. I also read that you specialize in depression, and so just curious, what are some early signs? Because oftentimes, again, this is something that it hits you, or you missed some really important signs that maybe if we could have picked up on, we could have helped our child, before it was too late.
Right. Depression's a complex condition. There are basically two components to depression. There's a genetic component. So if we have a mother or father or grandparent that's been diagnosed with depression, then our chance for that increases dramatically. But there's also a lot of environmental components as well. These things can be, excuse me, these things can be teasing at school. They can be low academic performance, low socioeconomic status. It can be the level of care and support and affection you receive from your parents or your caregivers. Any sort of familial discord, that there's a lot of fighting in the house, or any history of abuse or neglect. And these are all contributors to depression. So really, there's when we're thinking of etiological factors, there's a multitude of different areas where it can come from. That's why it's such a complex disease. And so some of the early warning signs, if for little children, aggression, inattention, impulsivity, those are all pretty early indicators that something is going wrong. What ends up happening, though, is that we see these things, but we all sort of fall back onto the more behavioral disorders. We're looking at ADHD, but depression and anxiety in little children can actually mask themselves pretty well as a more executive functioning disorder, something like ADHD. With the older children, if we're noticing the children sort of pulling away, if they're withdrawing socially or withdrawing from the family, if we're noticing changes in dress, if we're noticing changes in friends, if we're noticing a loss of interest in different activities, they are either not eating as much or eating a lot more, sleep patterns, if we're either up all night now or if we just are refusing to get out of bed. These are all signs. Basically, if you just feel like something's off with your child, there's a pretty good chance that something is going on there mood-wise, and they may need to get a little bit of help.
And that is the clear, open door to approach them and begin those ever-important conversations that we talked about earlier in the show. And I want to thank you so much, Dr. Snyder, for this valuable input and advice. And if you are helping your teenager manage life today, you can find more information about Dr. Snyder and his practice at Family Psychology Associates website, which is fampsy.org. Dr. Snyder, thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Doctor.
Have a beautiful evening.
Yes, you all have a wonderful night, too.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. He mentioned the teasing that happens at school, and I just got my first dose of that with my little boy. Oh boy, let me tell you, I was using my meditation and yoga practice. I was doing some deep breathing and considering the appropriate response and who to talk to, and does it even require action, and how serious was it? I mean, there's been a few times he's come home crying. Some older kids not being too nice. They're teasing him, and so. Yeah, it's a very
That's
important
wicked.
thing.
That is such a bummer. I know.
It is. But it drove me to invite a specialist on for next week's show.
Okay.
And I would say for anyone who has a child in school or who might have a child that's being bullied or knows someone who is, join us next week because I've invited Judy Friedman of Easing the Teasing, and you can find her website at easingtheteasing.com. And she's going to discuss bullying with us, how to spot it and how to stop it. So that's going to be... And, you know, it's funny. I'm from a really small town, Texas, and I didn't see a lot of that. Everybody knew each other, and, you know, everybody's parents knew each other. We didn't lock our car doors or our house doors. It was a very interesting place. And, you know, yeah, some things happened later in life where children weren't always making the best choices. But if at an early age a child wasn't behaving, we'll say, you know, one parent would just talk to the neighbor. And it was nipped right in the bud. You know, what's interesting is that, so, of course, I'm from the city, so it's totally different. But the teasing then, the teasing and the fighting, I think what happened is that you just had to do that. Meaning, I don't think the teasing, well, no, the teasing was bad. There was definitely bullies and all that. But what would end up happening at a certain point, then everyone would beat up the bully. But I think the teasing now is at a whole different level because of being... politically correct and all that. People tell them, don't whack them, don't do this, don't do that, and all that has really done. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but I'm saying that what that has done is that gives bullies a much wider stance. Yeah, well, I think it's important. We have to empower our children to stand up for themselves. Listen, there's no doubt. I mean, I'm just explaining why I think it's got so heavy. Yeah. You know, and it seems like it's a real problem. I mean, some of these kids are basically taking themselves down because they got teased. Yeah, and that's intense. It is intense, and you know we want to teach our children to be loving, gentle, and kind. And you know, it goes back to the golden rule, or there's this awesome rule in yoga that's called ahimsa, which means non-harming, non-violence, and you basically want to treat everything with gentle energy. I mean, I think of the Dalai Lama or Gandhi. This is so cool you're saying this. Oh, you know what? When I just went up to Boston, right, I was beside this guy in the plane. This is crazy. I'm swapping gears on you for a second, but this just brought it up. And this guy had yogic powers. This is like out of nowhere, right? And I'm looking at him saying, this was a great 2-hour ride. But I'll stay with this one. He was saying to me, we were talking about something that was negative. He says, you just stay away from that. So my question would be, now the kids can't stay away from that. But in yoga, there's no doubt peace, love, but he was explaining, he says, that energy, you got to know that energy's out there and you got to get away from it. Yeah. You know, but how do you tell a kid to get away if he can't? He's in school with it. Well, you know, or even you bring up the aspect, well, hey, listen. Yeah. You know, and I know you wouldn't do that. Yeah. But if that's real, that's what I was looking at. I said, oh, this is interesting. Yeah. He's saying, no, that energy is there, and do not go near that energy. Yeah, and they say in yoga to observe it from a safe distance, so you want to avoid getting involved in it, because that can cause danger to yourself. Yeah, big time. So it's really good advice. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation next week. So thank you so much for joining us tonight on Mindful Living. We hope to have you back next week, 6 p.m. Thanks for joining us. Have a lovely evening. Health and beauty from the inside out. Namaste. Namaste, folks. Have a great one. Have a safe one.